Mobile hunters, if you're interested in upping your mobile game, then head to tetherednation.com and check out their saddle gear. There are a few things you can actually buy that will help you become a better deer hunter or give you the freedom to hunt any tree or any situation. This is the reason why I started saddle hunting in the first place and why I use Tethered's gear. I can honestly say that Tethered's saddle gear has changed how I hunt for the better. Big tree, little tree, from the ground, it doesn't matter. I'm untethered by my gear to hunt the best setup for the situation, instead of hunting for a tree that my gear can use. My current core setup consists of the Phantom saddle, tethered one sticks, and the Predator platform, along with an assortment of their accessories. So if you want to up your mobile game, head over to tetherednation.com. If you're like me, you spend lots of time poring over maps, looking at weather data, all in an effort to help predict when and where my best times to hunt will be. It'd be nice if there was a reliable source with all this information in one place. Enter the Spartan Forge app. Unlike some other predictive apps on the market, Spartan Forge was created from military combat intelligence experience tailored for hunters, and stands at the nexus of machine learning and white-tailed deer hunting. No more man-made algorithms. This is a predictive model based on real GPS-collared deer data, historical and predictive weather, and the next level of mapping imagery, all at my fingertips. I've been using the iOS app this season, and it has replaced all my other mapping tools. Visit SpartanForge.ai and sign up today, or head to your iOS or Android app store. Use the promo code TRUTH to save some money and download it today. Welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 292. Today I'm joined by KC Smith of The Element, and we're covering how travel hunting helps adapt your game and applying what you learn. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you are doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. We are now in the month of July when antler growth is going to be popping off. This is the time that you really kind of see, you separate the men from the boys, I guess you could say, in one way. You're going to really kind of be able to tell the deer that you have on camera this month, what they're ultimately going to probably turn into for the most part. The month of July, they put on the most amount of inches during the course of this month. Of course, August is a little bit of a finishing month. You get a little bit more there, but they're going to do the majority of their popping during the next couple weeks. I actually just got back from vacation, spent some time in the Finger Lakes in New York, did a little boating, did a little beaching. It was awesome. That area is beautiful. I love spending time there. Actually, I need to figure out a way to spend more time there, I think. I'm realizing I'm kind of a lake guy. I like the lake. I like the water. I like being on a boat. I like all the stuff that kind of happens around it. We did a little bit of horseback riding, too. So it was really kind of an outdoorsy type of vacation, which was a lot of fun. But usually when I do my vacation around this time of year, the 4th of July, when I get back, it's kind of whitetails and hunting, full court press from here on out at this point. I have a few cameras that I still have to get out, which I'll probably get out next weekend. Most of mine have been out since, I don't even know when, February, March. But I do have a handful of them that I need to kind of put out in some key locations. And then probably make my first kind of camera check to see who is in and around the area. I'm not going to go hog wild and crazy and check every single camera. Probably ones that are close by. Some of the new ones that I've put out in some new spots, I of course will check those just to kind of make sure that they are gathering inventory. Places that I have that are kind of old faithfuls and standbys. If I'm in the general area, I'll swing by and check just to make sure nothing weird has happened and the SD card isn't full, that I didn't have like a bunch of false triggers or whatever. But for the most part, the ones that I kind of know, love, and trust, I'll probably just let those soak, and I'll check those out, right as my season kicks off, which for me, it'll be right around the 17th of September, I think is opening. But, what really signifies things kind of ramping up for me is, got my PA license in the mail, and you have to submit your doe tags and stuff like that. So I actually did that this past Sunday morning. It was time to get those in Pennsylvania for the first round for us residents. So sent that in, and that's always kind of an exciting morning. I get up, have my coffee, fill everything out, put it in the mail. The pink envelope, my PA brothers and sisters, you'll know what I'm talking about. A little bit of a pain in the ass. Wish they would just kind of make that all digital and be able to do it online. You can buy your license online now. So I don't know why we can't buy our doe tags online, but hopefully one day we'll remedy that. The only other big news, well, I guess two other hunting related things. Right before I left for vacation, I actually went out to my buddies, Bob and AJ's, the archery shop that I go to. If you're in the area, you should check those guys out. Super good dudes out there. But I went out. I was going to just basically get my bow tuned because I got the new Exos MMT arrows, and was basically just going out saying, hey, check me out, make sure my center shot's good. Just basically early season tune up. I always take my bow out there and have those guys just kind of give me a once over as the season's kind of getting up and ready to roll. And I happened to shoot a handful of bows just on a whim, and maybe I'll make a video about it, but I'm going to shoot a new bow this year. I was kind of set on not shooting a new bow for this upcoming season, but I was hanging out. AJ and I were just at the shop chopping it up, and was checking out some different bows. And there's the one brand that I usually, not that I like or dislike, it was more so just like all their bows previously I was just never a huge fan of. But the new Hoyt carbon fibers, the 30-inch axle to axle bow. I think it's the RX-7, if I'm not mistaken, something to that effect. He put it in my hand. He's like, hey, this is probably one of the best shooting bows I've ever shot. He's like, you should check it out if you're kind of interested in maybe checking out some new bows. So I shot it, and probably shouldn't have shot it, because once I shot it, I didn't want to not shoot it. So that's actually what I'm going to be shooting this year. So I left that with AJ at the shop, and have to actually find some time to go out and get it this week. And pick it up, because he was setting it up for me, changing all my stuff over from my previous bow. But the funny thing is, between that bow and the new arrows that I'm shooting, he had the bow before as I was leaving his shop, I was driving home. And as I was driving home, I was maybe 5 minutes down the road or whatever. He texted me a picture of basically a perfect bullet hole that, I took in one of my MMT arrows from Exodus that I wanted to make sure he was using. He uses that to dial my bow, and so he's using the arrows I'm going to be hunting with and stuff. And perfect bullet hole in like no time at all. So tuned up really easy. Arrows were flying good, and that bow will be ready to roll. And now I just need to go pick it up, get my sight tape set up, and I'll be ready to rock and roll with a new bow for this year. The other thing that I did, if it was jam-packed, even though I wasn't home for a week, man, I jam-packed a lot of stuff in on Sunday and right before I left. I actually went and did a little glassing. This time of year, I like to kind of do a drive-by. I haven't hit all my areas yet, but I'd like to do a little drive-by of any of the crop fields that are close. Now, most of the places I hunt don't have crop fields adjacent to them, really any of them, to be honest with you. But what I like to do is just kind of find out what's in the area. Because even though, a crop field might be a mile or whatever away from where I'm hunting, that might be the best destination food source that they might have during the course of the summer. So I'll go kind of drive by, and I want to know what the crop rotation is. I kind of know what it is just from years of looking at some of these similar spots. I know, last year it was corn, so this year it's going to be beans, but I always just like to do a drive by and kind of confirm that stuff. Because there are some spots where the best bedding, the best secondary bedding off of some of those food sources are near some public pieces that I can hunt, especially for early season, because my part of the state comes in early. I can sometimes get a bead on a buck early and maybe make a quick strategic strike during that first week, maybe 2 weeks of the season before October hits and they fully kind of disperse and shift. I might be able to get a week if I know where something might be laying its head to try to make something happen. So last night I actually went out and did some glassing, this first glassing session of the summer, and saw one decent buck. If he continues to pack on inches during the course of July, which he should be a pretty decent deer for the upcoming season. So that's always kind of a fun thing to do, is the first glassing session of the summer. But with that, that is basically my update for this week. Pretty stoked that hunting season is just going to, a couple turnarounds here, and I'll be getting ready to leave for Idaho. Have everything kind of ready for that. And otherwise, just going to sit, wait, monitor cameras, and try to keep myself calm until hunting season lands. But with that, before we jump into today's show, have a quick piece of housekeeping that I want to give you guys a quick update on. Our buddies over at Exodus, they're kicking off, as they do every year, their annual Velvet Fest campaign. If you're not familiar with Velvet Fest, this is the official start to deer season, as I just mentioned, kind of checking for all those velvet bucks and so forth. But Exodus is helping get the ball rolling for everyone's summer scouting. I know when Velvet Fest hits, it means it's time to get all the cameras out. If they're not already deployed, this is the time to do it, to make sure you have everything into the timber. But from July 15th through August 19th, they'll have some awesome prizes for people who use the hashtag VelvetFest, all one word, on social media showing their whitetail adventures. Also, if you're in the market for a trail camera, Velvet Fest will be the perfect opportunity to get ready for the season. Exodus will be sending out exclusive savings through their email newsletter throughout the campaign, so be sure to head over to ExodusOutdoorGear.com and sign up for their newsletter to get those. But to get things started, save 20% on any multiple Exodus render or any render bundle for the first 100 orders. Use the code VelvetFest, that's all one word, VelvetFest, to lock in these awesome summer savings. Every single camera ordered comes with a random prize card. I've been told it includes some pretty kick-ass stuff, including the all-new Exodus MMT tailored arrows. Over the last 7 years, Exodus has consistently shown they build quality gear that flat out works, and of course, they have the best trail camera warranty, period. Every single camera is backed by the 5-year warranty and comes with a theft and damage coverage. Yep. 5 years, literally half a decade, you'll be covered by the Exodus 5-year warranty. But more than likely, you won't need it because the cameras are already built to last. They also launched the Exodus MMT this summer. That's the arrow I'm going to be hunting with this year. It's a tailored arrow built to your specifications using nothing but the highest grade components, period. Head to their website and use the 3D builder and experience the best shooting hunting arrow available. As I mentioned, I was able to play around with this a little bit and shot it prior to getting my new bow, and then my new bow using this arrow tuned up in a matter of minutes. So make sure you check out the new arrows that Exodus have on their website. Be sure to take part of the Velvet Fest celebration, and be sure to tag Exodus because they'll want to see what you guys are up to this summer. So with that, have a cool show for you guys today. Have my buddy KC Smith on from The Element. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with KC and the Element crew. They do a great job filming their hunts, have a bunch of cool videos every year. You know, one of the things that I really appreciate about what they do is it's just a really kind of honest view into their hunting adventures. You know, they hunt all over the country. You know, they're big travel hunters, doing it primarily, I don't want to say 100%, but I would say pretty close to 100% on public land, and they just get after some monsters. And one thing that Casey and I talked about was a little bit about that travel hunting and how it kind of helps us learn to adapt by seeing new ground and so forth. Especially, we talk a little bit about ground hunting because I know that Casey specifically likes to hunt the plain states, and that's something I started doing last year, and I'm headed back to the plains again this year. And it's just that we talk a little bit about that learning curve that it takes. When you move from hunting Texas, where Casey's at, or hunting Pennsylvania where I'm at, and going to those plain states where you're really kind of glassing and spotting and stalking, somewhat hunting it like you're hunting Western big game to a degree, but relying on your skill set from the ground more often than not than being in a tree. So with that, it was a super cool conversation. Hope you guys dig it as much as I did. And as always, I want to thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I have what we affectionately, how he's referred to in the community is everybody's best friend, Mr. KC Smith from The Element. What's going on, brother?
Oh, not a lot, man. Just trying to hide from the Texas heat. It only got to like balmy 97 today here, so it's not too bad. But we're looking at about 9 days over 100 degrees on the extended forecast right now. So, just trying to hide. What we do all summer, us and the deer, but all just panting and waiting on the fall.
Yeah, I hear that, man. I thought it was bad here today. It was, I think it was 89, and I was like, goodness. I was like, I'm ready to do some hiding. It's like
it's all relative.
Yeah. It's like, truth be told, it's like after we're done here, I'm actually gonna run to the gym, like to the jiu-jitsu gym, and roll. But there is no air conditioning in that warehouse. So that thing is just like a hot box sauna when you during the summer. So I'm gonna go get myself a little taste of Texas here, maybe.
Yeah.
In the
sure.
In the form of a roll, but
you'll get the humidity in there. All those sweaty guys in there rolling around. It'll be nice and muggy and disgusting, just like it is here.
Yeah, you walk in that place and you feel like you feel like you just took a shower. Like the mats are all like completely wet already. Like it feels like it's
Mm-hmm.
raining in there. The best, I used to live in Orlando for a long time, for about 10 years. And the best kind of description of Florida weather that I've ever heard someone give was like, Florida weather is like if you went and you took a shower and you got out and then you just put your clothes on. Like you didn't like
Yep.
towel off or anything. You just,
Dude, absolutely.
yeah,
Yes, and it's not that bad where we live. It is hot, but we get a little bit of dryness. We still have Gulf humidity. But I used to live down south of Houston, if you can imagine there being such a thing as south of Houston, and that's exactly it. Dude, I would work out in the gym in the mornings, take a shower, and then go to work all day and just never dry off all day long. It's
right.
the weirdest thing.
So are you from South Texas? Is that where?
No, I'm from Northeast Texas. Actually, that's where I was born and raised. On the shores of Lake Fork. If anybody has ever been in the bass fishing world too much, Lake Fork's a famous bass fishing lake for largemouth. Um, so that's where I was born and raised, and then I've traveled the state and working all over the place, doing all kinds of jobs. So I've been all across the Lone Star State.
Right. Now, are you correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't you guys doing the element full time now, or did I miss?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a recent blessing for sure. We've been working at this thing for about 6 years. Tyler and I doing stuff together, and this year we're going to be able to go full time. Now that doesn't mean buying new uh, dually trucks and jet skis anyway by any means full time. But we've been putting full time effort for a few years, and this year we're going to get to really go after this thing. So it's pretty exciting, man, and been very blessed throughout these opportunities for sure.
That's awesome, man. What is the one
Thanks.
thing? What is the one thing? Like looking back on it, right? All 6 years of just working diligently and hoping one day that it would kind of get to a point to where that you can make that your full time deal. Like, what was the point? Like, what was the point where you were like, you know what, this might actually work? Was there like an aha moment where you were like, man, this thing actually, we might actually do this?
um, Let me think for just a second. I would say that never really came in business. Like I still don't have good confidence in the business of things. If that makes any sense. Even though that like things are going to be fine, and if God wills it, we will continue. But like I think it was more in like learning how to travel and hunt and get it all on film because
Hmm.
I've hunted my whole life and I know how to go out and be successful. Or this is a hunting podcast. We can say kill, right? I know how to go kill deer.
Exactly.
Not bragging by any means, but if I work hard at it, I can make something happen. But putting it all together on film, just in different parts of the country, that's kind of the aha. And I think that happened November 23rd of 2020.
Hmm.
I killed a public land buck traveling across the Midwest by myself, self filming, and got it all on film. And I think at that moment, I was like, you know what? I can do this.
Hmm.
I'm not just a carpenter who deer hunts a little bit. I can put a production together and put something out that hopefully people care to look at. So I think that was kind of my aha moment there.
Nice. How long how long were you self filming and stuff before it started? Because I'll be honest with you, man. I've
Hmm.
self filmed on and off for several years, and I always every year without fail I get to a point in the season where I'm like, man, I am ditching this camera stuff. I'm done. Like, you know what I mean? I always start off with the great
I know
intentions.
exactly.
Yeah, and I take it every hunt, and I'm stoked on it, and I'll get some really good B roll of like maybe a buck that I passed or whatever the case is,
Yeah.
and then it'll either cost me a deer because I was messing with the camera and not paying attention, you know what I mean, or
Hmm.
didn't get set up the right way quickly enough or whatever the
Yeah.
case is. Or sometimes it just becomes I'm in one of those funky trees where it's just hard to get set up in it and I'm messing with the camera. I'm just like, you know what? I've spent 10 minutes trying to get this thing set up and like I just want to hunt and I'm done. Like
Hmm.
how long did it take you before it was like you could actually integrate self filming into your hunts seamlessly where it wasn't like a complete burden?
Well, I don't mean to discourage you, but I don't know if it's ever seamless. But um, uh, so let's just do a little timeline of like how hunting and filming kind of came together for me. I met Tyler, I think, in 2015, and we started hanging out a little bit in 2016. We actually were gonna, uh, he was gonna come down to the coast where I lived and do some red fishing with me. Well, that still has never happened as long as we've been friends.
Nice.
Uh, but that's how it started, just dreaming about things to do, and then ends up I like to hunt and he liked to hunt, so we ended up talking about that instead. Well, that fall he decided to go film me some because I hunted public land locally, and he normally had a deer lease with his dad elsewhere. So anytime he was around here, he didn't really have a lot of places that he knew to go. So he started going with me and kind of being cameraman, and I just would hunt. He'd be like, "Hey, you cool if I bring the camera?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, totally, whatever."
Mm-hmm.
I kind of don't meet strangers, and that includes cameras. So I now by no means was I just totally natural back then on film, but like yeah, I
Right.
was like, whatever, I don't care. So we started filming a little bit of stuff, and I didn't have to mess with cameras at all back then. He was just filming me, and then the next year he's like, "Hey, man," or actually throughout that spring, we kind of made a plan of trying to film our hunts and stuff. And that's when I started diving into the self filming game and learning how difficult it can be. And it cost me dear, just like what you're talking about. But
Mm.
there comes a point in time where you just have to commit to, and I'm not trying to give you advice. You do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, it came to a time where it's like you just have to commit to getting things on film and that being your primary objective. And there will probably be a lot of guys who have a problem with that statement, and that's okay too, because people oftentimes are like, well, your primary objective is to go out and enjoy creation or kill a deer and bring it home and eat it or whatever. And yeah, that's definitely all wrapped up in it, but we wanted to get things on film. So you just kind of have to just say that you're going to do it, and you're going to miss out on some deer
Right.
because of it. And I think with that, what makes you able to make that commitment is just committing yourself to being in the woods more. If you're a
Right.
guy who gets like 6 to 12 days a year that you get PTO or whatever, and that's when you're going to hunt. Like, man, filming might not be for you much over like a GoPro or a Tacticam or something that you can just strap on your bow. Just because like just the law of averages means you're not going to have as many encounters as somebody who has a little bit more time. So don't waste that encounter trying to get on film when it's the only one.
Right.
So uh, I think that after committing to it for about a season, I got to where I was pretty good at it. And well, I don't want to say it that way. You get what I'm saying. I
You
got
you,
to where I
you
felt
felt
like
you
I
felt
could do it.
you could execute it is what you felt.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, just like shooting a deer with a bow. You get to a point where you're proficient, and you're like, this is a part of my system, and I can do this. Now, just like with a bow, shooting a deer, sometimes things can still go wrong, and that happens as well. Whether you don't forget to hit the record button, or the deer walks out of frame, and there's all kinds of little things that can go wrong with filming a hunt, right? And
Yeah.
then now we've kind of come full circle for the past, so I'm counting 22, our current year as year three. So for the past 3 years, we have attempted to have cameramen of some sort, either interns, or this year we actually have a paid employee, which I'm very thankful for Eric. He's a champ. He does a good job. We had an intern one year that didn't go very good.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of skipped out on us about halfway through, and then Eric came along last year and recorded a bunch of stuff, and there was some learning curve involved and stuff, but he was most of all tough, so he was always there,
Right.
doing his best, and that's I can deal with that. Like we'll learn the camera stuff, man. If you're tough and you don't complain about being cold or tired or whatever, like yeah, let's do this thing. So now I don't have to worry about self filming near as much anymore. So I'm very
Nice.
thankful for that
Right. Yeah.
too.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's six and one half dozen in the other for me because I've done a trip where I had a camera guy for the whole thing, and
Uh huh.
that was awesome. It was my buddy Zach, uh, great videographer and photographer, and he's also a like a hardcore like public land hunter too. So he's
Uh
familiar
huh.
with the grind and all that stuff, and he
Yeah.
was but it still was like tricky. It was different for me having a second person in the tree, and
Hmm.
man, you better be able to like that person because you on a hunt traveling, because this was a travel hunt that we were on. and you're going to be all up in each other's business for a lot of days. You're going to be sleeping
Mm-hmm.
together, eating together, sitting in a tree
Yeah.
together, you know. And
Peeing right next to that guy. You can't be pee scared if you got a cameraman. Like you're
yeah,
liable to be touching shoulders and trying to use the bathroom. It's just
right,
the way it goes
exactly.
sometimes.
Exactly. And is and
Yeah.
hope that they have like the same type of like in the tree hunting acumen where know when to
Yes.
move, know when not to move, and
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky where Zach's killer. So, we had no problems with that, but I've also heard some horror stories just, where it didn't work. For
Yeah.
me, I'm primarily self-filming. Like where it really bit me was I was messing with my camera. I was on a out of state hunt. I was actually in Iowa. It was a public land hunt, and I was catching some decent deer on film, and I got a bead on where I thought a good deer was at, and I found some killer hot sign. I set up on it, and wouldn't you know, within like 45 minutes of setting up on that sign, here came this like hammer, mid 140s, maybe a little bit bigger 8-point, right? So like big for an
Mm.
8-point, and
Oh, toad.
I had the camera and I was moving it around and there was a scrape that he was coming up to check and I was like, all right, this is where he's going to be. And so I kind of moved my camera around and got it in position, was getting ready. And I was looking down at it, trying to make sure it was recording, making sure I didn't bump it. And I drew back and I rushed the shot and I missed. And it was because like at the
Man.
last second he moved and I had to like move around the tree and I had to move the camera around to get over there. And when I did, I had just a second to draw, got drawn, and I had more time than I thought I did. But I just rushed the shot because, it happens a lot, right? You
Yeah.
usually have another
Absolutely.
second or two than you usually think that you do to take your time and make the
Mm-hmm.
shot. And I just rushed it because I was getting all flushed with just doing some different things that I hadn't been as familiar doing. And I ended up missing that deer.
Mm.
And that
Man,
made
that's
me,
tough.
yeah. And the kicker, you know what the kicker is? I never hit record.
Oh no! So you don't have footage of the deer at all?
I don't have footage of him
Oh
at all,
man.
like nothing. I didn't kill him and I didn't get him on film. So it was,
Gosh,
so that was the last day the camera went on into the woods on that trip. That was it.
that's a high stakes trip too, man.
Yeah.
Like Iowa only comes around every so often.
Yeah.
Because you got to draw it. So it's like, gosh, that's yeah. I understand where you're coming from on
Yeah.
that.
Now I did make
Because you're
amends.
there.
I did make amends and kill a buck on the very last day of the hunt. So it was like
Yeah.
on the 16th
Cool,
day of the
man.
hunt, I actually filled the tag.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, but that still has never left me. So to your point, where you have to commit, what I mean, the way I kind of commit to it when I go into a hunt, you know, because like my primary thing isn't my YouTube channel, it's the podcast. So I go and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, if I can get the deer on film for like, then I will. But my first
Mm-hmm.
priority is me shooting,
Yeah.
and that's kind of way I walk in is like, this is the objective. And if the filming can happen as a byproduct, then awesome. If not,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to let it, force a bad shot or whatever the case is.
Yes. Yes, for sure. That's a big thing now. Honestly, this year there's a good chance Tyler and I will have a camera person with us the whole time, and that'll be so helpful because then we get to go back to that mentality. Because truth be told, outdoor TV for a long time has told us you got to get the kill shot. You got to get the kill shot. Well, most people are actually really forgiving about that.
Mm-hmm.
If you tell a good story and get some good pre-roll of a deer, you know, it's up to the hunter when to take the shot, and the cameraman gets what he can. That's at least that's how we operate,
Mm-hmm.
And if he can't get it on film, then so what, man? It's still the experience of the hunt that we were all there for,
Oh,
So that's
that's the big thing, right?
yeah.
It's like I want to feel like
Mm-hmm.
you were there. Like one of my favorite hunts you guys did, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, but was the one deer that you double lunged and it was a whole like it was crazy, a crazy episode, right? But like
A
when
fiasco,
it was a
yes.
fiasco, right? But it's like I mean, you were kind of creeping up, and I don't want to bury the lead, but you were creeping up over this thing, and like I couldn't see the deer on camera, but I knew what was going
Mm-hmm.
on, and then you saw the deer take off, and it's like to me that didn't change the intrigue of the hunt at all. It actually
Yeah,
it added a little bit to it, to be quite honest.
that's cool. Yeah, man. I'm glad you like that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
That was totally by design. We directed it that way, and that's exactly how we remember.
It was like that's how we storyboarded that thing, you know.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, that's awesome. But I know you like to travel a lot, dude. And we'll
Hmm.
get to some travel hunting stuff. But we were talking a little bit before we hopped on here off, when we were offline about just hunting in Texas in general, because I have an interest in coming to Texas at some point. But I think
Yeah.
that there's a lot of conceptions about Texas and how to
Hmm.
hunt Texas and what is available to hunt Texas and things like that. So I guess can you just I'm a layperson when it comes to this. I don't know really anything about it either. So how is Texas from a hunting perspective? Because I think the thing that people think about is like high fence ranches and things of that
Yeah.
nature, right? Where I watch stuff that you guys put out, and I know some other guys that hunt Texas, and that's not necessarily their experience. That experience is there to be had, but that's not necessarily what they're doing. So can you talk to me a little bit
Yes.
about your home state and how you hunt it, and maybe even the differences between there and like things you experience in other places?
Yeah, man, I'd love to. So the thing that I think a lot of people kind of forget is how huge Texas is. It's the size of Poland. Okay,
Hmm.
it's the third biggest state in the nation, and one of those is Alaska, which is half of our country, right?
Right, right.
So, like, California and Texas are pretty much the same size states. So Texas takes like if you were to drive from Texarkana, which is kind of near where I'm at in East Texas, go all the way to El Paso, you could get to Miami from Texarkana before you can get to El Paso.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, same goes for Amarillo to South Padre Island, which is Amarillo is still 2 hours from the northern border of Texas, but you can get to like, gosh, what is it? I think you might be able to almost get to Minneapolis, St. Paul in the same amount of time as you can get to South Padre.
Wow.
Uh, might not quite be that far, but yeah. So Texas is huge, right? So with that comes so many different hunting cultures and styles, which is unique and neat. I wouldn't say that I participate in all of them, and I don't. How do I say this? Uh, I don't really want to be a part of all of it. I'm not going to tell people that they're doing things completely wrong and they're stupid, but
Mhm.
there's some things that I'm not as big a fan of, and that's just kind of how things go.
Right.
But overall, Texas is definitely not a strictly high fence state.
Mhm.
But what Texas is a very private land oriented state. We have, I think, 2.2% public land, and only 1.7 of that is actually huntable. And I think I haven't ever seen the actual stat, but I think that about half of that is going to either be limited entry or not even allow uh, big game hunting. So you're looking at a really, really small amount of public land that you can go out and chase a deer with a gun or a bow. So that's part of why Texas gets kind of the um, look that it does from the outside looking in, because any hunting production you see from here is usually guys coming in and going to some type of ranch because there's really no other option to do.
Right.
Because it's just not like who wants to go to Texas and go just hunt on a random WMA that is just subpar hunting when you can go and do the Sendero thing in the mesquites down there in Central or South Texas. So
Right.
it's so different. The habitat across the state varies so much. Where I live, my truck right now is parked under 80-foot tall pine trees, and I'm surrounded by other oak trees and stuff too. And it's a little bit hilly. You head to the central part of the state, and you've got pretty big hills, and you've got live oaks, clear water streams, and limestone, and then you head further south, and you've got mesquite flats and cactus. Head out west, and you got the Trans-Pecos region that's desert, and then you got the high plains that's more like Nebraska in the Panhandle.
Mhm.
It's just so different and weird.
What
Um,
what
so
what's the not a ton of public per se. What's the
uh
I
huh.
mean, does it get a ton of pressure? I mean, I'm from Pennsylvania, and public land
Yeah,
here
sure.
is we just have a ton of pressure. We have a lot of hunter numbers. I know Texas has a lot of hunter numbers too. So I'm just
Hmm.
curious what that pressure looks like on those pieces. I mean, is it just completely beat up, or can you still kind of find some hidey holes?
You can definitely still find some holes. Um, we've done a lot of public land hunting in Texas and struck out real bad and had a little bit of success too. I think overall, I find that the the open walk-in stuff that anybody can go hunt on is pretty heavily pressured and I don't want to say mismanaged because I don't know all their management plans and all, but it seems as if the deer densities and population levels are lower than the surrounding private land areas. So it seems as if it's geared towards opportunity as opposed to quality for a lot of the walk-in stuff. Now, you go down further south, like southeast, you got a couple big national forests, and that's really good opportunity for people because it's actually really big chunks of land, and a lot of it, it's just not a area of the state that's traditionally known to have a high population density or trophy quality. So you can go down there and hunt some deer,
Right.
but this might be kind of tough.
Right.
One of the key things about Texas, not to derail us too far, is that anywhere you find deer, you usually can find hogs. And I find that a lot of out-of-state guys, especially, are just as pumped up about shooting a pig as they are about shooting deer. So,
Yeah.
there is always that opportunity thrown in there as well. So that kind of helps make up a little bit of the difference, I think.
Right. Yeah. I've never hog hunted. It's something I've always wanted to do. I've just never had the opportunity to.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things, like for at least us East Coasters, it's not something that's readily available to us, so it's kind of unique.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I've
Yeah.
always kind of, and look, I like bacon. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So
They're delicious, man.
yeah.
I actually used to work for the state. Doing feral hog control was a big part of my job, and yeah, after all those times, I did a ton of disease testing and all kinds of stuff, and I was a little weary of it at first, but now I love eating wild pigs. That's what um, we don't buy meat except for a little bit of chicken. That's
Mhm.
all my family buys, And if I could figure out how to raise turkeys at my house, I won't even buy that. So I'm
Nice.
working on it. I promise. Uh,
Right.
uh,
That's
Funny
awesome.
enough, anecdotally, we live in a part of the country that does not have wild turkeys, which is kind of crazy.
That
So have
is.
to raise them.
Yeah, that
But
is kind of crazy.
I bet 40% of our meat is wild hog meat, and it is absolutely delicious. It's one of the best things you can take home. It's definitely different than deer. It's not in the venison category, but it's very tasty.
Nice. Yeah, it looks like I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
put a hog hunt on my itinerary one of these years and
yeah, you
make that
should,
happen.
man. It's so much more readily available, and even if you are open to a pay to play situation, they have high fence hog hunts, which I think are kind of silly. But there are plenty of places that it's like $150 a day type thing, and you can go out and shoot pigs and use whatever means you want to, and go home with some really good meat. So it's definitely much you know a I just say poor man's type thing. Like
Right.
it's a thing that's readily available for a lot of people and can be done outside of your normal hunting seasons. It's during January, February, uh, or in March, that's what we do, man. We chase pigs around with bows, and it's so much fun.
Nice. I was just gonna say it's like it could be a nice little supplemental kind of piece to my hunting season to extend it, which would be, and
Yeah, absolutely.
that's not cost prohibitive necessarily.
Hmm. Yeah, and also not -10 degrees or whatever y'all get up north. Like
Yeah.
most of the time, we've had a couple cold spells the last few years, but down here, a normal January day is high in the high 50s and a low around frost.
Right.
So like
Right.
you're looking at a pretty nice weather for stalking animals.
Right. So, man, being in Texas, you get all these different places, different types of
Hmm.
habitat to hunt and stuff like that. And again, I know you like to travel to hunt and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And whenever you do that, it requires you to be able to kind of adapt to the different places that you're going because you're going to have different terrain. Some places may have trees, some places may not have trees, like whatever the case is. So, I'm just
Hmm.
curious, how has how did your hunting style kind of start maybe before you started traveling a lot
Yeah.
versus how has it evolved that now that you've been kind of, since you started traveling a ton?
Sure. Yeah. That's a neat thing to talk about, man, because it really does change you. And honestly, like even change the way you traditionally did stuff where you started hunting
Hmm.
because you learn so much when you travel. Of course, in the field is going to be the thing that is, the shiny thing to talk about, right? But even just like the way you prepare and the way you scout and do all that stuff as well, like changes a lot. But as far as like actual hunting goes, for a long time, I was a guy, well, when I first started hunting, we had a deer lease in Central Texas, and I was mostly a rifle hunter out of a box blind over bait pile, and that's the way it's done in Texas. Bait's always been legal. I don't know if it'll ever not be here,
Hmm.
and it's definitely for anybody who has never hunted a bait state, as we call them. It's not money in the bank like you might think it would be. It's still pretty tough. Deer get real wise, just like they're coming into a food source like acorns or persimmons or whatever. Bucks especially know what they're doing around those things. And uh, honestly, where I live, the average property size is probably like 12 acres. So there's a corn feeder at least every 20 acres.
Hmm.
It
Right.
ends up not being all that's cracked up to be, right? But anyway, so that's how I started hunting. And then I kind of developed a love for archery hunting, but still like in permanent stands. I shot my first buck out of a semi-permanent stand. I actually filmed that deer. That actually might come out on our YouTube channel this summer. That's going to be pretty cool because that was in 2005, I think. I shot my
Nice.
first archery buck. Yeah, and definitely a baby faced KC shooting a bow from the early 90s.
Right.
Dude, I don't know how it happened, but no rangefinders, of course, right? Rangefinders were new technology in
Right. That was
2005 or
high. That
whatever
was
it
high.
was, right?
That was bougie.
Yeah, no, yeah, man. I didn't have a chance at one of those things. I was a high school kid hunting in my leather steel toe boots, and
Yep.
I think I had some type of Walmart camo on and just maybe a pair of blue jeans. I don't even know. But I just saw this buck come out. I was hunting kind of a hayfield edge, and he walked out into the pasture, and I grunt stopped him and shot him and guessed him at 35 yards and absolutely ripped him. Double lunged him just to guess at 30. And then I was like, okay, cool. And now looking back, I'm like, dude, how on earth did you pull that off?
Right.
With a
Right.
with a bow. And I did the whole dumb thing where you like shoot your field points all year, and you're like, oh, that's good, and then screw your broadheads on and put them
Right.
on. Who knows what my arrow did? It might have just dropped right into it. Like it's just doing a corkscrew and it worked out.
Right.
I don't know, but
uh,
humble beginnings for sure. And then starting to hunt public land, there's technically rules about how you're not supposed to leave your stands too long, this and that. And those
mhm.
things always get broken, but I never had enough money to set up like 4 or 5 different stands. So I always carried the same one. And I either left it in one spot or I'd leave it there for a week and then move it when I see deer moving elsewhere and all that. Um, and then finally found a really good spot. This is, let me think about some dates here. This would have been the fall of 2013, so about 9 years ago. Um, I, I had scouted a place, ended up being like a 1.7 mile distance walk, and got to the point where I couldn't do that with a big heavy stand. So I was like, well, how am I going to make this work? And so that's kind of where my mobile hunting kind of started. I was still using a steel stand and
Mhm.
all that, but I had to figure out the steps thing and how to bring them in and all that. And that's when I finally kind of had the thought of being mobile with hunting. But it's not like it's stuck or that's the way I started doing things all the time. It's just I learned that you could do that.
Right.
And then, you know, so on and so forth. You start wanting to venture out and understand, the concept of blowing out spots or the concept of feeling pressure from other hunters or whatever it is that might be a circumstance that makes you want to move. And then you realize how advantageous it is to be able to hop around. So then Tyler and I once we started hunting together, we went to using tree stands that had brackets on them, like those little muddy pros or whatever they were called, or Vantage. That's what it was. Um, and we used those things a lot. And they were super comfortable, but it was kind of loud to put up and still kind of cumbersome. I remember Tyler and I talking back then, and we're like, man, it'd be cool to have a saddle. I see those guys talk about this stuff, and Tyler, I remember saying to him one time, he's like, man, I don't know if you get comfortable on those things, and I was
Yeah.
like, you're probably right. And it looks real uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
then about 3 years ago, we got a couple to try out, and they were like, this isn't too bad. And now, like,
Yeah.
I'm either saddle half the time or I'm on the ground half the time. And that's the way I hunt. And just look back and think that at one point in time, I hunted the same stand, no matter what wind direction it was. And that stand was in the tree all year long. It's like, man, that is night and day difference And that's one of the big things that you learn traveling is that like the ability to be mobile is key. When you go to a place that you don't know much about, you're learning on the fly. Like the ability to take the knowledge you learn on the fly and convert that into moves that you make instantaneously. That's how you kill big deer when you're on the road.
Yeah.
You can't sit there and lay up. I don't know if you golf or I do a little bit, not a whole lot, but you can't lay up and hit the side of the water 3 or 4 times because you got to go after that deer.
Hmm.
That ends up being the thing that translates the most to me that I've learned that helps me kill deer on the road.
Right. So two
Yeah.
questions like popped to mind as you were kind of explaining that evolution. So one, you
Mm.
started talking about hunting mobile, and and it was out of necessity, right? Like you just like
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a lot of stands, and I want to go to some different places, so I got to do what I got
Yeah.
to do. But did you, did you immediately start to recognize the benefits, or how long did it start to take you to realize that the benefit wasn't only so much so that I could move when I wanted to, but that I was trying to figure out how to say this. That it wasn't just the ability to kind of move when I needed to, but it was also the ability to kind of first time ambush, right? First set's the best sit,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
I'm setting up now, and instead of just being stuck in this one tree, I'm now going to move because now I can set up so my thermal is helping my wind, and I'm getting the advantage while the deer still thinks he has the advantage. Like, when did all that stuff
Mhm.
start to come into play with like your mobility kind of allowing you to achieve those things?
Man, I'm pretty stupid to tell you the truth of the matter. It took a while. But, uh,
Hey,
you know,
preach, man, preach.
uh,
I'm there with you.
I'm not young, but I'm not old. I'm 33. So when you're some guys when they're younger, they're smarter than I was. Like I took a while to learn a lot of things through
Mhm,
life. I did some stupid stuff when I was young, outside of the hunting too,
mhm.
and had to be redirected a few times. And I think that's how it works in hunting. But the thing that you got to be mindful of is when it's time to learn, you need to learn it and make it permanent in the way that you operate. Right? Like,
Right.
I think that a big mistake for a hunter would be to like learn something on a specific hunt but not be able to apply it later.
Yeah.
That's you definitely need to be able to retain that stuff. So I I love to give you super long answers, so I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I
But
love it,
I
man.
think that uh I probably learned that around 2018 is when I started learning that some because that's when Tyler and I were really pulling our stands almost every set and trying to go in and surprise a buck. And we were always correlating trail camera data back then to make that happen. And we still do that a lot, especially with cell cams nowadays. We use Moultrie mobile cams and the ability to have that and not have to go in there and smell up a place to pull the card. Back then we would like go in, have a card reader or something with us. That way we could pull the card and hunt there and hopefully like correlate some stuff because you didn't
Right.
want to like waste an intrusion on just pulling a card. So you just go in, assuming you're going to hunt there, look at the card and see how good it has been in the area,
Mhm.
after you've done some summer scouting or whatever. So I think 2018, Tyler was after a pretty specific buck on Texas public land that year. And we were doing all kinds of crazy stuff. We hunted the same place a few times, but we'd always pull our stands and make sure we hunted on really good winds and that sort of thing. And we actually had to use some kayak access across a body of water to get to this spot. So it was pretty bomb proof access. It's just took us till that year to probably realize what that ambush really looked like.
Right.
And then I think too, to I know you have another question, and I'm probably distracting you, so I'm sorry. But
Man, I'm literally
another
writing
thing,
questions down as you're going because I'm like, oh man, it just made me think of something
or
else.
good. So one thing that I think you have to do whenever you're thinking about that ambush, like first time in type thing, is to really try to understand how deer use the wind, because hardly ever is the wind perfect for you as a hunter, and the deer still do what you want him to do.
100%. Yeah.
Because like the thing that you're going to want to do as a guy who's starting to try this ambush type hunting where you go in, hang and hunt and kill a deer, is you're going to want to wait until that wind is the perfect southeast for this setup, and there's your wind's blowing out across the water, and the deer has no chance to smell you. Well, he knows he has no chance to smell anything around there, so he ain't going to be in there. 9 times out of 10, that still can work out, and in mid-November they're real dumb, so
Right.
you can kind of get away with some things.
Yeah.
But overall, I shouldn't say they're dumb. Y'all know what I mean. I'm making jokes, but I think that with that ambush hanging hunt style stuff, it's real good to understand what the wind the deer thinks is advantageous for him and try to go in and set up just off of that
Mm.
to be able to make the kill. Otherwise, you can put in a lot of effort going in and doing a hanging hunt early in the morning and not see the deer that you're going in there at.
100%, dude. Like there's like if I get asked, if someone asks me like, what are the two things, or what are the things that, helped me the most, like when I started having the right kind of encounters and sticking the right deer and stuff like that. The first
Mm-hmm.
the first one is always, once I was able to understand how the wind and thermals kind of work together in spots,
Mm-hmm.
that changed my whole world. And it wasn't that I didn't know it prior to that. It was like I still struggled to use it because I wasn't like I'd set it up just slightly wrong or whatever the case was, right? Or I would
Mm-hmm.
set up at a certain time of day and then just kind of forget that, hey, man, my thermals are going to change throughout the day based on the sun hitting the ground, and I need to account for that. And
Yeah.
so it was things like that to me really kind of, was the nail in the coffin. Like once I got that and didn't need to necessarily think about it anymore, that I could just get into a spot and
Mm-hmm.
be like, oh, this is how this is going to work. Kind
Yeah.
of leveled up at that point. The other part that you mentioned, and I wanted to get back to, it's kind of a statement in question. Like, so you said apply what you learn, and that's the other thing that I always kind of mention to folks if they ask me again, what two things kind of made the biggest difference for me was honestly travel hunting. And I've actually talked to Tony
Mm-hmm.
Peterson about this, where it's almost like I refer to it as making like like my head's a hard drive, right? And the more things that I can see in different states, the more analogs I create for similar setups that I might see somewhere else. And so even though
Mm-hmm.
I might be in a plain state, a ditch crossing is a ditch crossing, whether I'm in Nebraska or whether I'm in, Iowa, whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't have to be
Yeah.
exactly the same, but it could just be the roll of the land. And I can go, oh man, the wind did this in that spot. And this looks like a really, really similar setup to that spot. I think I need to set up like this.
Yeah.
And so I start,
Absolutely, man.
it's almost like deja vu, but it's more so that I'm just recalling experiences I have. Do you kind of feel the same way that like when you started traveling a lot, like all of a sudden your setups became more precise because you just had so many analogs to kind of like harken back to that? I may have not have seen this exactly 100% like I'm looking at it right now, but man, I had
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 different experiences that felt really, really similar to this.
Absolutely, dude. It's you have such a good example or analogy there, and like the way I think of what you're saying is like it's like a document template, and then you're just filling in the blanks,
I
you
love that.
know, uh,
Yeah.
with all that in there. It's still what I love. Tyler and I like to talk about this a lot. Whitetail or whitetail, no matter where they are in the country, they have to do whitetail things. So you just take and fill in the gaps with the things that you can put it, in your favor wherever you are in the country, and that's your strategy for getting close to a big buck.
Mhm.
Now, I will say, there's some things that throw me off because they're still so unpredictable, and that's why we love them, right? But like, I can go out to a plain state and think I have something figured out, but then all of a sudden you're on a different property where there's 17 variables that you haven't considered yet, and the deer are doing something exactly opposite of what you think they're going to do. So like there's always like you're saying, like a new thing for the algorithm to encounter, right,
Yeah.
and learn from. Um, and I'll say too, like I haven't logged enough data in the hill country.
Hmm.
Like what I'm imagining that you might hunt quite a bit in Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
Those you know, what I would call ridges and hollers. I don't really know,
Yep.
whatever y'all call them there, but
Yep.
that's tough for me. And so I kind of tend to shy away from hunting places like that just because I feel much more confident in other stuff. Now
Right.
I would like to go hunt some of it from time to time, but
Well,
it's I
you got
just
an
love
open invite here, buddy. Anytime you want,
cool,
I
man.
will I will oblige you. I got a sweet camper that I built that I turned into a rolling kind of like trailer solar powered kind of hunting travel rig that you got a place to stay.
That's neat.
Yeah, we'll do it up. But it's funny because like I get that from folks that maybe don't hunt ridges and stuff like that all that often, but I
Yeah.
almost feel like it's easier
Yeah.
because yeah, I just feel like in certain instances, at least in certain setups, like you know where the wind is going to be bad and you know where it's going to potentially be good
Mhm.
typically. And I
Mhm.
feel like the bedding is a little easier to kind of a little easier to figure out as well. And
Yeah.
then you have like not I don't want to say drastic, but you have obvious kind of terrain features that are going to have to move deer. You know what I mean? That like,
Mhm.
if they're taking the path of least resistance, they're only going to go but so many places from wherever they might be bedding, whatever whatever example we would use. And so
Yeah.
I actually get more confused when I'm hunting a plain state because I'm like, man, what's going to move? Like, you know what I mean? It's like there's no ridge to push them in this one direction. There's no,
Yeah.
whatever the case is. If it's always blowing west, if the wind's always blowing from the west, they're going to end up in California. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yep.
it's just I find that kind of terrain to be more challenging for me, but it's also what's that is the most foreign to me as well.
Yes, exactly. And then you're a lot of times you're more comfortable with what you grew up with or what you know how to hunt now or get the opportunity to hunt the most. Um, and I don't get to hunt the plains as much as I would like to, but I do hunt them quite a bit. That's such a weird thing to say because I'm blessed and I get to hunt them a lot more than most people do.
Yeah,
But I
right,
want to be
right.
there every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So, uh, but it's I am very visually oriented when I hunt. So I like to be able to see and make moves on deer and see what they're doing and make assumptions according to some of the things that I can take in visually. And I have a hard time with that, in some of the more eastern hilly stuff
Mhm.
where, I would imagine that there's not many times you're seeing much over 100 yards where you're sitting.
Oh goodness,
So,
man. I most of the
yeah.
time where I'm set up, a lot of my setups, I might be able stretching it to see 30 yards,
hmm
you know?
Yeah. And with that comes another reason why you're like, oh, I'll leave the camera at the house. I can hardly see the deer anyways,
Right.
So,
Right.
and that's what I've dealt with my whole life in East Texas. It's a thicket like that, even when the leaves fall, seeing
Yeah.
50 yards is tough. Um, but when you're hunting small properties, it just is what it is. You're not that worried about seeing far. But, some of these plain states, you can hunt a big old chunk, big for me at least, a
Mhm.
couple hundred acres or whatever, and you can make some moves when you can see that far, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, that was the one thing for me, hunting some plains and stuff is that I had to kind of recalibrate for was being able to see. You know what I mean? Like it was
Uh
almost
huh.
I would have a hard time imagining because here on the East Coast when you're hunting hills or mountains or whatever, typically you're getting in like the thickest nastiest stuff you can find that just you almost feel like you're getting into like a boxing match or a fight in a phone booth. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how you
Yep.
set up.
Yeah.
And when I get out to some of those more wide open states and stuff, I just feel a little bit I lose my wits just a little bit just because I'm able to kind of see so far, and I kind of get paralyzed by all the information.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Where I'm like, man,
Yeah.
where exactly do I set up here? Because I can see here, I can see here, I can see here. It's like, but it comes down to what you
Hmm.
were saying earlier, which is just it's having that kind of like mobile mindset that if you can see it, then you can make a move on it essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell Tyler sometimes that sometimes you just got to be Indian, and
Yeah.
just go with your instinct and just go hunt and kill them. And I'm impulsive, and it makes me a good hunter sometimes, and it makes me a bad hunter other times. And this is why hunting with a hunting partner is so valuable because Tyler is much more analytical
Hmm.
than I am. So he analyzes things a lot, and we have a very balanced approach when we make decisions together because we just sit there and shoot holes in the boat until it sinks for
Yeah.
almost everything we do, and it works really, really well. You got to set some pride aside because you have to understand that um, it's not that your idea is stupid. It's just we're trying to make sure that it is the best thing to do, and to do that, you're going to have to point out the flaws in it. And
Right.
when you Yeah, hey, if you're going to function with another person, you have to be able to set your pride aside, anyways. You know, it's just how it goes.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a great thing. It makes me a better husband and father. Not that I'm great at that, but I try um, to be able to do that, right? But
Yeah.
Mark Kenyon, if you know him, he has talked about analysis paralysis and
Hmm.
something that he suffered with that. He's told us about that before, and I can definitely see where that's a thing. And it's not something I struggle with too much, but Tyler can have it happen to him a lot. My thing is I'm a guess and check type guy, so I can sometimes blow things out or not do the right thing in the moment, but at least I can always make a decision. You know what I mean?
Right.
So within that, we can usually come up with a really good plan.
Right. The other thing, and I'm curious, I know we talked about this a little bit whenever we spoke, like I guess last week when we were kind of getting
Yeah.
dates and stuff set up. The other thing that was kind
Hmm.
of a brand new thing for me whenever I started heading to the plains and stuff was just hunting from the ground. I love hunting from the
Yeah.
ground. Yeah, I'll
Hmm.
I'll say it this way: I love hunting from the ground. It hasn't learned to love me yet. You know, we're in a
Oh man.
we're in a one
Yes.
way relationship right now. You know what I mean? And
Uh
we were
huh.
both kind of talking about that a little bit because, and I want to get to this hunt, but you had a killer hunt, you know, in the plains, and it was on the ground, and you know. And while I was out there, I'd say like 98% of the hunts I did while I was there was all on the ground, and I just fell in love with it. But man, the smallest mistakes on the ground will just cost you big time. Things that you will get away with in a tree just do not fly on the ground. And how long of a learning curve was that for you?
Um, in 20, let me get my dates right. In 2018, um, I shot at my first buck from the ground and missed.
Mhm.
And after that, hunted from the ground a whole lot and didn't kill a deer from the ground, a buck from the ground. I've killed some does from the ground all over, but I haven't killed a buck from the ground until uh, 2021, and I shot two of them.
Mhm.
And Tyler and I have forever talked about how difficult it is to put it together on the ground. And honestly, the hunting from the ground is such a strange thing because some guys like say like your whitetail adrenaline guys, Chancey and them, like uh
Savages,
they
dude.
can,
Yeah.
yeah, dude, killers, man. They can put it together and trophy hunt from the ground. And I'm definitely after a big buck whenever I'm trying to hunt. So I mean, that's just I love killing big bucks, right? We all
Mhm.
do. That's why you and I both have podcasts because we're
Right.
eat up with it, right? So, but like have to have short term memory. Tyler talks about this a lot because he was a defensive back in college,
Mhm.
and it's like you got to have short term memory. You know, you might get burned for a touchdown, but you don't want to get burned for two of them, right? So you need to forget about your defeat and just focus on the next play. Same thing goes with deer. Um, you're going to blow way more things on the ground than you are going to have success. And a lot of times when you're hunting from a tree, if you blow it, it just means you don't get your shot. Well, if you blow it on the ground, a lot of times you're spooking a deer.
Right.
And
Yeah.
a big mature buck is only going to deal with that for so long. And that's what impresses me so much about uh, Nancy and Jared and them is that, dude, they can kill big deer from the ground, and it's cool. But like, uh, I can't, it took me a while
Mhm.
to really learn it all. And that I think that was the thing is when I first started hunting from the ground, I was trying to ambush hunt still, and I still do from time to time. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll be headed out someplace that has a mix of grassland and trees, and I'll have my cruiser saddle on, take it with me, and then I might end up on the ground or I might end up in the tree, just depending on the situation.
Yep.
But like, I was still for a long time trying to like set up, make a little ground blind, and the reason I was hunting from the ground is because there was no trees.
Right.
Well, now I kind of hunt from the ground more because I trying to get in the way of a deer and that might be near a tree or it might not be. If that can you see the difference in what I said
Yeah.
there? It's kind
No.
of hard to explain.
No,
Yeah.
it totally makes sense because I used the same approach last year. So truth be told, like I kind of knew I was going to be heading to the plains in some capacity, and that was a place I wanted to experience. And so I was starting to hunt from the ground some here, just even on the East Coast in certain setups because they were just
Mhm.
good setups where I knew there weren't going to be a lot of people because there weren't a lot of trees. and there
Yeah.
was buck signs. So I started kind of dabbling with it in that regard. I was doing the same thing as you. I was walking in with a saddle on. If I needed to get to a tree, I'd get to a tree. Not now. I was doing the same thing in the plain state, and it was more about it. At least for me, it was more about. And I heard I talked to Jared a little bit before I went out there, and
Hmm.
I've heard them. I've had them on the podcast before, and I've heard them talk about it, and it was all about a visual for them, you know.
Hmm.
And that was the biggest thing. Like I didn't really understand it until I got out there and realized, to your point, an ambush hunt can work, but you better know that dude is coming from X to Y. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Otherwise, like you were just going to be flying on a hope and a prayer.
Hmm.
But your better chance is get a visual first, watch that buck, make a plan, and then execute the plan. And
Yes.
we got burned on that on the first buck that we actually betted a buck in a draw, and we just got too ambitious and went after him too quickly because we betted him at like, goodness man, we probably betted him at like 8:30 in the morning.
Hmm.
And we could have sat there all day and watched him and waited for him to get up, and confirmed exactly where he was at. But we were all amped up. We're like, let's go. We busted out the decoy and the rattling antlers and went after him, and we got within
Yeah.
probably 60 yards of him, and then he blew out, you know.
Yeah.
And it was because we didn't 100% know where he was bedded. We had well, he was actually bedded exactly where we thought he was, but we didn't know that
Hmm.
until we jumped him.
Yeah.
But so I totally understand what you're saying. Like you're kind of going in wide open, and you're kind of prepared to kind of use whatever means that you have to use, depending on if it's in a tree or not in a tree, or maybe you're just up against a tree for cover to get some shadow or whatever the
Hmm.
case is.
Yeah. I think that even this season alone, just hunting the rut, I developed a lot, and I kind of forced myself to because we were hunting. Uh, First morning I was out there, uh, I found a buck that was like a world class type buck for me, like a
Mm-hmm.
170 plus.
Mm-hmm.
That's why that number is
Yeah.
there. And dude, that's 30 inches bigger than anything I've ever shot. I'm like, come on,
Right.
let's get after this
Come
thing,
on with it.
Yeah. And so I chased that deer for like uh, probably 7 days.
Mm.
Had uh, an encounter with him almost every day, and except for a few days where I just felt like the wind was just going to be real bad, and I didn't need to go mess it up. But um, and what I learned by doing that is that uh, at first I would have a destination in mind of where I was trying to get to, and then it developed into being the thing that you're talking about, where like you put eyes on the deer and then you make a move according to what he's already doing. Now that's very specific though, because you can only do that in certain types of habitat, right?
Yeah.
Like if it's flat country, you're gonna have a tough time because you're gonna have to have a map out and kind of trying to correlate where he's headed because there's no steering of that deer with terrain.
Right.
Or if you're in wooded country, like good luck.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to tell you to start with that. But at least not being set up in an ambush situation, but being able to make moves. You might have that deer go behind a thicket or a brush or something and be able to shuffle 20 yards to the left or right where you're more in line with his path. Whereas, like, if you're set up in a ground blind and you're not even really ground hunting at that point in time, you're just ambush hunting. It's like you're from a tree, but your shots are worse. Is
Right.
about all there is to it. And that's how I ended up killing my buck that you're talking about. We had just pulled up to this place that you could glass from the truck, and kind of had written off that other big buck. Hadn't seen him for a day, and it was 9 days into the hunt, and I was like, I need to just find a deer to shoot because that's not really like me. I don't hardly ever have a target buck,
Mm-hmm.
and as a public land guy, um, that's not really a thing that happens for a lot of people. I don't think. Maybe it does, and I'm just terrible and can't find a target. But like, so that was a weird deal for me to spend that much time chasing a big deer, but he was worth it. And I learned so much from that deer and he's beautiful, like I'm not sore about it. That deer was awesome. I loved getting able to chase that thing around, but, ended up finding the buck that I did shoot, glassed him up that morning and decided to just make a move up the canyon, kind of slowly putting, glass right over the edge of rises and stuff, trying to find him. And then, dude, I thought we had about lost him. And then we were walking kind of down on this I don't know, washout edge, kind of a straight drop off. And I glanced ahead and I could see a main beam at like 40 yards and about lost my mind. You know, it's like, you're like, well, I guess he's gone. And then, oh my gosh, there's a buck. And I didn't know how big he was because all I could see was kind of one tine in the end of a main beam.
Mhm.
And it was kind of a little bit crab claw on that one. And I was like, well, if that's his third, he's not very big. But if that's his fourth or his fifth, he's real big. And so I didn't really know. I knew the deer was worth stalking. You know, I knew
Right.
he was a racked buck. You know, I didn't know what he was for sure. So whenever you're talking about that footage of me creeping up, I'm I'm literally processing where's the deer? Is it the buck that I saw? And is it a deer that I want to shoot? All within all that, little amount of time. And dude, it was wild. I can't believe I killed that deer, to tell you the truth of the matter, because uh, stupid me, I should have known that he was with a doe, embedded with a doe. But I thought he was just bedded up in this spot, right? So I'm looking for the buck, and you can see it in the footage, but all of a sudden the doe blasts off right beside us. We had no idea she was there, freaks us out. She's like 5 yards away and climbing a hill right next to us. And then, for a split second, I looked at her, saw no antlers. So I like right away look back to find the deer. Sure enough, I see the buck. I'm already at full draw because I know it's about to be time to shoot. So I actually drew before I started creeping up to the edge, being to be ready. Well, he's looking up at her at like 8 yards away. He's super close, right? And I'm like, well, I do not have much time. So I made a quick split second decision to shoot the buck. Um, Knew he was quartering away and looking up, and I was like, well, this is a pretty good shot. So I shot, and he takes off out of the brush, and he is actually quite a bit bigger than I thought he was going to be. So
Yeah.
I was very very happy because he takes off. He's got an arrow hanging out of his opposite side, pass through. Arrow's bloody, and deer takes off over the rise, and I'm like, oh man, that was awesome. We just smoked a giant buck. I'm kind of freaking out with my camera guy, and then all of a sudden I see him come up the other side, and then your heart sinks because you're like, okay,
Yeah.
a mortally injured deer isn't going to be able to climb 30, 40 feet.
Right.
So at that point in time, it's anxiety to the max, right?
Yeah.
And you've seen it. People can go watch it if they'd like to. I'd really appreciate it. It's a really fun thing for us. But to make it a little bit shorter, what ended up happening was a couple things. The deer, I believe, was actually still bedded when I shot at him, and I thought he was up, but I couldn't see his legs very good. I think he had just turned his front half back to look at that doe, and I shot. And what happens when deer are bedded is their vitals kind of shift around in their body a little bit. So I hit that deer behind the shoulder. My arrow exits in his opposite shoulder, like kind of like at the point, right? So
Right.
definitely all up in vitals. But I opened him up and looked at his lungs. I hit him in both lungs, but it was right up at the front top of the lobe. And I don't think, like, we are very absolute when it comes to deer hunting in a lot of things, right? And I think that to borrow, I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan, but I'm a nerd, dude. So like to borrow a line from Obi-Wan Kenobi, only a Sith speaks in absolutes, and it's the same thing. Like you shouldn't speak in absolutes because nothing is absolute with deer. And what I think that a double long hit is not, they're not all the same, and that's what I dealt with there. That deer was mortally injured, but it was in the upper lobes of his lungs, and it was going to take him a very long time for his lungs to fill with blood,
Right.
and for him to expire, and so much so that. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it probably would have been one of those things had he not had that doe not kicked out, right, and you shot him
Yeah.
even in the same way, and he didn't know something was up and weird,
Mhm.
he probably would have jumped up and been like, "What just happened?" Walked off, and then eventually just laid down and died, most likely,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
It's that spook factor where they're like
Mm.
just going on like whatever adrenaline when you don't have the perfect shot. Like it's gonna die. It's just a matter of like how much is he spooked and how far is that going to push him before he decides to lay down and give it up?
Yes. Yeah. And that was so wild because we're in open country, so I can watch him the whole time.
Right.
And the deer ends up looping around, and he goes and kind of beds down in this little finger, and I'm thinking, okay, we're just going to sit here for a couple hours and let him expire because I know, dude, I saw the arrow at 8 yards. I knew it was a good shot or good in quotes, right? And then, like after 30 minutes, I already called Tyler and told him, as soon as I shot, I called him, like, hey, man, shot a big buck, but he's not dead yet. It's weird. So you might come over here. I know sooner or later we're going to have to get this deer out because I was confident he was going to die. Well, we see that deer get back up. And so I tell Tyler, hey, man, why don't you go down the drainage here just in case, that way if this deer, takes off running or whatever, you'll be down there to kind of, finish him off or whatever, but not thinking that it would never happen. Right. And
Right.
then the deer like goes and sits under a cedar tree for 30 minutes and then does like what a duck does, where you shoot them on the water and they land on the water. He did a recoup
Mm-hmm.
and just got up and started walking like he was fine. And so then I hustle around, make a big old loop to get in front of him. And I think I'm down in the creek bottom where I'm going to be able to finish him off. Well, I think the trail he's going to take is at 75. He ends up actually up the ridge a little bit. He's more at like 95. And I didn't even have time to adjust my sight. And I just tried to hold over and end up hitting low on him and or missed him low. Sorry. And I think it's over. He runs after that. And I'm like, gosh, dude, like I just messed this whole thing up and I'm never going to see the deer again. And then Tyler calls me in 30 seconds and says, he's dead, dude. He's laying right here. I'm like, no way. And lost my ever loving mind, dude.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely lost it. And, gosh, I try to keep composure, but sometimes I'm a pretty emotional guy and I'm kind of wired kind of high, So, like, at that moment, it was like, elation.
Right. Yeah, dude, it was bananas. Like I couldn't believe it. Like my heart sank whenever when you missed that second shot. I was like, I was watching the video. I was watching the video and I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Like he's not going to, like this deer's going to just like vanish and he may go lay down and die somewhere. But like at this point, he's going to just be pushed so hard. But yeah, I mean, anyone out there who hasn't seen it needs to go check that out in addition to all the other stuff you guys are doing. But I know we've been on here for about an hour, man, and I want to be sensitive to your time here on a Friday afternoon. I could sit here and talk to you for days. We're going to have to do a second and maybe even a third one of these.
Hey, I'm all about it, man. I enjoy talking about this stuff. It's great to be around other people who are passionate about it. And sorry I talked so much. I definitely appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk and tell some stories and stuff, man. And,
dude, you're gonna have more opportunities, dude. Because I'm just I love having you on. This has been a killer conversation. But before, I always like to end with one specific question here. All right.
Yeah.
You're making a team of public land whitetail hunters, and your life depends on them filling 3 tags. You're making a 3-on-3 basketball team, right?
Okay.
You can pick anyone who is living, not living, famous, not famous, whatever the case is. Who are the 3 people you're going to count on to fill tags to save your life?
Okay, so I'm not one of the 3, right?
You can be or can't be, but I usually say you're the coach. I usually kind of approach.
I'm going to be a coach for sure. I'm going to be a coach for sure, and let somebody else do the shooting. So, man, I can't not name Tyler Jones, right? Yeah. I mean, he is my hunting partner, my best friend, and I trust him with my life, man. So, like, the dude is a killer. He's killed way more big deer than I ever will. So he's definitely going to be on the team. I'm going to pick Chancey Walters because he uses a compound and Jared uses a trad bow. And I think that Chancey's going to kill more deer because of that. So you can tell him I said that. And Chancey's just a stone cold killer, dude. Yeah. He's just, I love Chancey because he's so instinctive. Like we've had him on the show a few times, I think. And like, he's one of those guys who does a good job of telling stories and telling you why he did stuff, but he actually sometimes makes moves and he can't tell you why he did it, but he killed the deer. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
100%.
He's just that in tune with them.
Yep.
And I want to be like that one of these days. So I'm going to put him. And then, man, that next one's tough because it's one spot, but there's nobody I trust more probably to fill a tag than Tony Peterson.
Yep.
TP, like, especially his ability to kill deer in September and October is super impressive. I have a ton of respect for that dude.
Yeah.
Talk to him often. Actually going to hunt with him this fall. And,
nice.
sure he's gonna show us up, of course, But Tony, I've learned so much from Tony, especially about hunting around water.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I've never done before. And after talking with Tony about it quite a bit, I actually killed a public land buck in Oklahoma this past year, over water, over a pattern over water. And like, I would have never had the confidence to do that without Tony. So I think those are my three.
Nice.
But there's a long list. If somebody gets traded or gets sick or something, I got a long list of other dudes. My buddy Zach Farnball, he's on the alternate list for sure. It's just I can't have somebody with better hair than me on the team.
That's fair. That's where you gotta have those Head and Shoulder sponsorship dollars, right?
That's right. Can't spread that stuff out too far.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome, brother. Dude, well, hey, I'm serious, man. You got an open invite. Anytime you want to come back on here, we're gonna do this again. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I dig what you guys are doing on the channel. If anyone hasn't checked it out, check out The Element. But before you go, let people know where they can find out more about you, more about what The Element has going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate the opportunity, Clint. It's been a lot of fun. And like we said, good talks, man. I'm sure that we have a lot more that we can talk about. So let's do it. But The Element, at The Element Wild, I think, is what you're going to find us at on socials. And the Element YouTube channel, of course, is where we have a lot of content. We have the Element podcast where we do our whitetail and other stuff. You might hear us talk about growing heirloom tomatoes or who knows what on that thing. But we do a lot of stuff on that and then socials. But I'd probably direct people to YouTube the most because that's where podcasting is great. I absolutely love it because it allows you to talk to so many people and do so much stuff. But we put a ton of work into our YouTube channel and producing quality video that I think people can not only enjoy and be entertained by, but also hopefully learn from, or at least learn what not to do. Actually, the most recent video we released was our 2021 bow hunting fails. So there's a lot of videos of us getting smelled by deer on there. So go watch that one.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, dude. You have yourself a good 4th of July holiday here that's coming up, and I'll be in touch soon, and we'll do part number 2 in the not so distant future.
Absolutely, man. I really appreciate it.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Spartan Forge, Exodus, and Skull Brew Coffee Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.